Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Club. This week's race C is unfortunately Group 4, which means that it's a Mazda fest once again, but thanks to my buddy Cantilever, I found a car that can actually fight it. Let's get into it. Our anti-meta car of the week is the very rarely viable Lancer Evo. The all-wheel drive grip definitely helps it exit out of certain corners much better than the Mazda, and since you don't have to use fifth gear, which happens to be the car's main weakness, you actually get a pretty good car on this track. In the end, the strategy is going to set you apart. It's definitely not as fast as the Mazda, but with the right driving conditions and the right strategy, you can definitely pull it off. Taking one look at the leaderboard, you can see how depressingly one-sided the meta is. It's incredibly lopsided. It's so ridiculous how many Mazdas are here. There are actually only 2 other cars in the entire top 100, myself and one other driver, and we both happen to be in the Mitsubishi. This is somehow even worse than the Daytona with the Ford GT, but we keep trying. A massive thanks to our friend Cantilever, who I affectionately call the Evo Whisperer, for creating this tune and giving it to us, allowing us to use it in the video. So thank you very much, Canty. I love you very much. You're wonderful, and you smell fantastic all the time. Starting off right next to the grass, as soon as it opens up so you can go in the curbing, I want you to move all the way under the curbing, putting the left tires on the green part. Right at the 100 meter board hanging above is when we're going to brake. Start turning into the 50 meter board, then downshift a second and let it coast to rotate just briefly before getting on the throttle, trying to get just the left tires on that red and white curb. Don't let your right tires go all the way over the yellow curbing there. It's very important that you rev this car out as much as you can, so don't shift until you get to about 103 miles per hour, and then you do not need to use fifth gear whatsoever. For this next corner, I don't want you to touch the curb at all. Stay really close to the curb, however, and brake right before the 100 meter board. Brake hard as you downshift to second gear, and right before you start to turn in, I want you to come off the brakes just slightly. Keeping a lot of pressure in as you trail brake in, you're going to come off the brakes entirely, and before you hit the gas, you're going to let the car rotate just a little bit so you can get up on that curb and then floor it. Don't steer too much as you're getting on the throttle, and if you don't steer too much, you should get oversteer instead of understeer. Don't countersteer, just let the car neutralize itself. For the next braking zone, we're once again going to completely avoid using the curbing whatsoever. About 1 car length before the 100 meter board, we're going to hit the brakes and brake heavily in a straight line. Turn in very gently after you get to the 50 meter board, making sure that you're not getting any understeer. Definitely make sure that you adjust your braking if you're feeling any kind of understeer. We want to apex late and then get on the throttle, full throttle in one motion, tracking all the way out to the green, but of course not anywhere beyond that. Once you've got full traction, make your way all the way to the right side of the track immediately. For this next corner, when you get the chance, you're going to move all the way up so your tires are just barely on the red and white curb. A car length before the 50 meter board, you're going to hit the brakes and immediately start trail braking in. Downshift to third and continually try to scrub off speed as you bring yourself closer and closer to the apex. You want to get all the way up on this inside curb. Once you're fully on the curb, gently get to full throttle without unwinding the steering wheel. You don't want to turn so much that you understeer, but you have to continue steering or else you'll go off the track. You can go all the way up on the red and white curbing, but you have to be back on the other side of the white line before the end of the curbing. Right here where the lines converge is where you're going to hit the brakes. Downshift to third and turn in before you get to the end of the red and white curbing on the right. You want to get all the way off the brakes as soon as you possibly can, and as soon as you get all the way up in this curb, you want to get back on that throttle. You can even touch that part of the curb with your right tires. As you track out, once again, it's okay as long as you've got 2 tires on the red and white curbing. Don't be tempted to track all the way out in the curbing to the left, that'll just waste your time, but you do want to use as much of the track as you possibly can, putting just your right tires on the red and white here. About 2 car lengths before this fence here on the left, you're going to hit the brakes heavily, downshift to third, and immediately start trail braking in. You'll see that I actually missed the apex because I turned in a little bit too late. You want to be all the way up on that curb so you can get on the throttle as early as you possibly can. Track all the way out to the edge of the red and white curbing once again, and don't forget to upshift to fourth because you will hit the rev limiter. About 2 car lengths before you see these little yellow curb bits, that's when you want to hit the brakes. As soon as you get to those little yellow curb bits, that's when you want to start turning in and you want to be in third gear. You can go over that yellow curb on the inside, but it can sometimes make your car upset and understeer directly off this, so use it at your own risk. Again, track out to the red and white and then get back on the track before you hit the grass, and that's your lap. So for this first corner, you can feel free to use the curbing. You don't want to go too much past the green part, but definitely use the curbing here. You do want to let off the brakes just slightly before you get on the throttle. You need the car to rotate just a little bit going into these corners. I'm sorry I don't know what the speed is in kph, but you need to rev it out as far as you possibly can before hitting the rev limiter. For this car, if you're on full brakes and you turn in just a little bit, it's going to understeer, and any amount of understeer is going to stop you from rotating properly here. That's going to cost you a lot of time. That's what I did in the Ghost replay that you can see, and you can see that when I didn't get that understeer, I had way more speed coming out of that corner. I have seen some people straddle the curb here or brake and then move onto the curb afterwards, but that always ends up slowing me down and extending my braking zone, so I just completely avoid it. And as you can tell from the lap time I got, it's not too bad, especially considering the car. You got to really make sure you use as much of the track as you can going all the way out on the curb here, and you've got to scrub off enough speed that you hit the apex and then get back on the throttle as early as possible, again, tracking out all the way to the limits. It's really tough knowing what the limits are with this car, but for most cars, if you see where the digital tachometer display is, that's about the width of the car. So if you're using this view, that's a little tip for that. For this corner, I think I braked at the right time, but I just turned in slightly too late. So turn in before the 50 and you should be golden here. You should be able to get a lot more speed than I did. A 33 is actually possible. I definitely know that I can get a 33 with the optimals I had, but I didn't have the patience to continue grinding it out. As a final note, use 0 on the brake balance. Deep into last night after trying a couple different cars and then even trying it out for an hour or two during my stream today, I'd actually considered not doing an anti-meta video for this race because I didn't think it could actually be done. Our hero Cantilever reminded me that the EVA was actually pretty high on the leaderboard and he had a tune for it. Not only that, he was showing some incredible pace during the race, so I gave it a couple tries. I think in the hands of an incredibly good driver, you could probably pull off the same strategy that I did even while using the Mazda, but the Mazda has a couple issues in this race. Firstly, since it's front-wheel drive, it does tear up the front tires, but hilariously enough, because of the track temp, the rear tires do absolutely nothing and they actually get super cold, resulting in oversteer in this race, which is actually pretty funny. Because of those two facts and the fact that there's a required pit stop, many people are choosing to pit towards the middle and then actually take tires. Taking tires takes a couple extra seconds, and if you pit in the middle, you're probably going to have to face traffic. So, the very best thing you can do, even if you're starting towards the front with this car, is to pit on the first lap. I'm not 100% sure if that guy was defending initially and then was just super clean and giving us all the space, or if he was just letting us go. But either way, that worked out really nicely, and we had almost just clean air with nothing but slipstream in front of us. Now, I may have forgotten to mention this, but having your brake balance at neutral allows you to have really good brake pressure. I'd done one race before this with Cantilever, and he was actually struggling not to run directly into me, like I did with that guy, however, into the braking zones. I had +2 or +3 for the braking balance, and moving the braking balance to the rear, of course, takes some of the pressure off the front. Since braking moves all the way to the front anyways, taking away braking power from the front actually completely increases your braking distance. The two main reasons for putting the brake balance to the rear for an all-wheel drive car like this would be to save the tires or to get the car to rotate. However, with the less braking balance to the front or the less braking power to the front, it actually makes the car rotate less, and the tire wear isn't bad enough that you really have to worry about that. So neutral brake balance is actually best for this car that we found. And as you can clearly see by that move, the Mazda is not infallible. Be very careful when you're entering the pits. It is useful if you use your blinker, because it's very possible for people just trying to go as fast as they can through here to run directly into you. And I actually saw that happen to a few people today. People were trying to go in the pits and the people behind were not, so they went directly into them. You may have also noticed that I almost went in the grass. If you do that, you will get a penalty, so definitely avoid that. As you probably saw just now, you just have to skip through. Don't take tires, don't take fuel, you don't need anything. You just need to take your compulsory pit stop as fast as you can and then get back on track, and hopefully you'll have completely clean air. I was really lucky that no one else was going in front of me, but that might not happen to you. So if people are going in right in front of you, you might want to take the chance to use one extra lap on track and then just get clean air when you do go to the pits. I want to give a random shout out to Voidsy in front of us. He's a controller player, which is cool enough in its own. But on top of that, he's using the M4, and you're going to see that he actually has pretty good pace, which is cool because the M4 is terrible. Now here's the wild thing, and really the crux of the strategy when it comes to beating the Mazdas. Like most races with a compulsory pit stop, the best thing to do is just not race people. You just want clean air so you can lap as fast as you possibly can. So, if you spend time in time trial, get your lap down, you can simply time trial the rest of the race by yourself. The tire wear doesn't matter too much, and you don't have to worry about fuel. So essentially, if you can get free air on the track, you're golden. I'm mentioning this right now because you're going to be blown away by how far we have to jump ahead to get any kind of action. That's right. Lap 7. We were almost completely alone except for making a single pass and then driving straight through someone's ghost as they served a penalty until lap 7. That is how effective this strategy is, and as you can see, we are now behind our good friend, J-Funk. J-Funk is a very competent driver, a handsome man, and a good friend of ours, and as you can see, he definitely knows how to drive the Mazda. You're going to see even more when the two people ahead go in the pit, so you can see how well he was doing in this race, and of course, how well our strategy worked. If you find yourself behind a Mazda, the very best thing you can do is try to stay within their slipstream. We talk about dirty air pretty frequently, so we're going to discuss exactly what you need to do to try to get around the dirty air. Someone had asked in the comments exactly what dirty air does to affect the handling of a car and why it increases the tire wear, especially. I believe it was actually in my Nations race that I won. If you haven't seen that video, please check it out. When you're driving in someone's dirty air, there's essentially not any kind of smooth air. It's turbulent air. All that air is going all different kinds of directions. Do yourself a favor and look up wind tunnel testing, and you can see exactly what the air coming off the back end of a car looks like. If you then imagine that air hitting the aero bits in your car, then you can know exactly what's happening with the dirty air. Since these cars are essentially built to have those aerodynamic parts working, when they don't, you have to rely on the mechanical grip, which is essentially your suspension geometry and how the tires are just attached to the ground. Not attached to the ground, but how the tires are touching the ground. In order to try to go the same speeds around a corner, your front tires are going to have to work a lot more. You're going to have to use more of those tires essentially to try to maintain the same speed, so that causes you to wear your tires out more. As you can imagine, that also means that your car can't quite handle at the same speeds around the corners as it could if you had really smooth airflow over those aerodynamic bits. The aero bits also help you slow down faster, so if you have less of that smooth air, then you're not going to be able to slow down quite as well as you could if you did. On top of that, you're probably going to be going faster if you were behind a car for a long time because you then did get the slipstream, because there's simply less air that you're running into. So when you're following closely, you've got to brake early. Some people will just brake at the normal pressure a little bit earlier. I usually add a little bit of brake a little bit earlier and then brake fully when it looks like I'm getting too close to the car. You'll also have to turn in a little bit earlier and wait a little bit longer to get on the throttle, but you can also adjust your lines. Especially with an all-wheel drive car like this, I could brake a little bit deeper in the corner, apex later, and then fully get on the throttle once my car is pointed better towards the exit. In the end, you really have to be in touch with how your car handles and how the car is affected by the dirty air, and all of that just comes from experience. So as you can see, the Evo is capable with keeping up with the Mazda 3. Now, if the Mazda 3 had another Mazda 3 in front of it, you probably wouldn't have nearly as much luck, because the Mazda is so good because of its power. If it had the slipstream from another Mazda, it would probably just be able to take off. Luckily, J-Funk was by himself up there in the front. Now, I don't know if J-Funk really minded here, but I kind of pulled off a jerk move on him. You'll see what I mean. I also want you to notice my optimal, exactly 35 flat. I was trying so hard to get a 34, but I couldn't quite get it. Cantilever almost got one too. He was actually pretty deep in there. But anyways, this is the move I was talking about. That was a dive. I went so deep and I slowed both of us down with that. But J-Funk's a sweetheart and he is a buddy of mine. I don't think he cared at all. This is my formal apology to J-Funk because that was just a terrible move on my part. However, if I did that properly, I braked just a little bit earlier than that and I actually did hit my apex, I would have been able to take off a lot faster than the Mazda. That one corner is definitely the Mazda's weak point compared to this car. If you get it right with this car, you will completely take off. And as you saw from the very first time, the very first lap in this race, I actually ran directly into the back of a Mazda. Luckily not hard enough to give either of us damage, but if he wasn't there, I would have been able to pass him all the way coming out of that corner. Jumping to the next lap, I actually want to show you that J-Funk could have easily passed me. I might have been able to actually pass him back again, but he was trying to give me the bump to see if I could get the 34. I didn't quite get it on this lap though, I will say that. I couldn't quite put it together, but this car is definitely capable of 34s, especially if you have slipstream, but it is capable of 34s even without the slipstream. Now, I really wish I could tell you that I just ran away with it, but unfortunately, on the final lap, T1, I gave myself a penalty. and that sealed the deal. There's no way I was able to get back in front of J-Funk, and in fact, if you saw, well, obviously you saw him bumping me that time, trying to give me the 34, it was pretty obvious that he could have passed me at that point. Like I said, I might have been able to pass him again after that, especially considering what corner was next, but I think this at least shows that the Evo is so evenly matched, or at least almost evenly matched, that you can indeed fight the Mazda. Thank you again for watching my videos. I have a special thank you actually. It is now a full year of making anti-meta videos, and I really appreciate all of you who have been here since the beginning, and of course all of the new people who have discovered me over the year. Look forward to much more of this, and I will start streaming on YouTube now regularly. Look out for the announcement. Thank you.